Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 356, February the 28th, 2018, Wednesday. It is Wednesday and you know what happens on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I take out the trash and I eat chicken. Every Wednesday, I take out the trash and I eat chicken. Oh my goodness, lots of news today. Let's get to it. A new Rasmussen poll. More Americans blame government failure than guns in the Parkland shooting. Here are the numbers. 54% blame government failure more than guns in the Parkland shooting. 33% say it's a lack of adequate gun control. And 11% think something else. Not sure what that is. But that's 54% blame the government, 33% blame lack of adequate gun control, and 11% something else. We're winning. You see, even with the wall-to-wall coverage, negative coverage, this shows you how little effect that the mass media has, that the liberal media has, because you could have taken away all their anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment coverage, and you would still get a number that looks a lot like this. I mean, this is traditionally what the numbers are. They're usually about half the country, a little more than half the country supports Second Amendment, and then you have the other half the country that are pretty divided. You have about half that don't know, and about half that are pro or that are anti-gun. It's been this way for a very long time. These numbers really haven't changed. That's the big story. That no matter how much you have going on out there, people are locked into these positions, and it's hard to change people's minds about these positions. And it depends on where you go in the country. If you were to do this poll in my county, it would be 90%, probably. 90% would blame government failure over the guns. But if you go into, say, Connecticut, or if you go into San Francisco, you would find the exact flip reverse. So it has a lot to do with where you go in the country as to how these polls are going to look. But I like Rasmussen, and when we were going through the whole election cycle, Rasmussen are probably the only real unbiased poll out there. But I like to use the aggregates, but Rasmussen does pretty unbiased polls, because you'll see their polls kind of go both ways. They don't really have an agenda. And I like the fact that when they do polls, they poll likely voters. And because that's really the people you want to be, finding out about, the people who are likely to vote. These other people that, who cares what they think? They don't vote. So, very important poll, and it shows that, if anything, whenever you have these types of events and the left comes out with all their anti-gun stuff, all it does is invigorate the other side. NRA memberships rise, gun sales rise. Gun sales under Obama broke records. And now we see, in Florida, we see gun sales of AR-15s and other semi-auto rifles skyrocketing. Because when people fear that they're going to lose the ability to go out and purchase a semi-auto rifle, they go buy them. This is what we learn. Charles Grassley, Senate Judiciary Committee chair, is narrowing in on the target. And he wants to get to those intermediaries. Oh, man. For those of you who have been watching my YouTube channel for all this time, nearly a year now, you know that for the longest time I've been saying, Christopher Steele said he never spoke directly to any of these Russian sources. He used intermediaries. I've been saying forever, you've got to get to the intermediaries and ask them what Russians they talk to, if any. That's what you got to get to, is the intermediaries. Now it appears that Grassley is dialing in on the intermediaries. And of course we just learned who the primary intermediary was. Mr. Weiner, Jonathan Weiner, from Hillary's State Department, close friend and confidant of the Clintons. That was Steele's primary, probably his only, besides Nellie Orr. So this goes back to a story that we covered about a week and a half ago, and Well, we were talking about this lobbyist, Adam Waldman, who had been contacted. He had been contacted by Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele was wanting Waldman to act as his intermediary to get to Mark Warner, Senator Mark Warner. And of course, we know that this attorney represents Oleg Deripaska. So Adam Waldman has got these connections to this Russian Oleg Deripaska, who's a close associate of Kremlin insiders, including, we're told, Putin personally. He's got this connection to Christopher Steele. He's got this connection to trying to get this connection into Mark Warner. So this is what Grassley is dialing in on. So Grassley has sent these individuals a letter with 11 questions. Maybe he wanted to one-up Nunes. Nunes had 10 questions about the dossier. So it appears Grassley has 11 questions. So he sent the letter to Warner, or not Warner, to Adam Waldman. And he's also, I don't know if he sent the letter to Deripaska, but I know they want to interview Deripaska, and Grassley's saying yes. In addition to the letter is like the first part. The second part is that they are going to call Waldman in to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they are going to question him in the committee face to face, as well as this letter. This letter is just to sort of get them some basic information to go on so they can formulate the questions for him when they get him there in person. And if he will not volunteer, and I think Grassley said by the end of next week, then they will subpoena him. So yes, Grassley is now dialing in the intermediaries, exactly what I said. If Christopher Steele was saying that he never talked to these Russians personally, that he used intermediaries, then obviously you need to talk to the intermediaries. You need to find out who they are, and you need to talk to them. And now we're finding out who some of them were. And now they're going to talk to them. And it'll be very interesting to see if they drop the name of Russians. We know Weiner comes from the Hillary universe. And we know that Waldman and Warner are both connected to the Clintons. But he also has connections to Mr. Deripaska, which is also someone who's become a person of interest. So we'll pay very close attention to this now that we're actually moving into an area which I've been saying they need to be looking at months and months and months ago. If Christopher Steele says he never got the information directly from Russians and used intermediaries, it dawned on me 7-8 months ago that, well, don't you think you ought to talk to the intermediaries, find out who they are? And now we're there. It just takes so long. It feels like we're months and months ahead of everyone else, but they're catching up. They are catching up to us. But, you know, I don't have to jump through all the hoops they do. I can just look at the information, think about it, use some logic, some common sense, or whatever, and it kind of presents itself to me, you know. And I think the same is true with Grassley and all these other guys, Nunes, but they do have to go through these processes that I don't have to go through. So I think that is probably the reason for that. I'm not questioning, I'm not saying to Grassley or Nunes that these guys are idiots and I'm smarter than they are. No, these guys are smart. They know what's going on. But they have to go through processes that I do not have to go through. So this is why that we're way ahead. It's not because I'm smarter than they are. It's that I have no filters. I have nobody blocking me. I can just, fire up my YouTube video and just go with what I'm, thinking based on the research I've done and common sense and the history and all that kind of thing. So there we go, my friends. Grassley closing in on the intermediaries. And that's where we'll start to get to real truth. And we'll find out if there are any Russians. He also sent a letter to Paul Hauser, who is actually Deripaska's London lawyer. Because, of course, Deripaska has a lawyer in Russia. He has a lawyer in London. He has a lawyer in D.C. So they've also reached out to this Paul Hauser, and he's also got some very interesting connections with Orbis and Christopher Steele. So the letter was also sent to Mr. Hauser, who is Oleg Deripaska's lawyer in London. So Grassley is trying to get a handle on he's trying to get a handle on this intermediary thing and who is exactly an intermediary and what the chain is. He's trying to find the chain, who's connected to who's connected to who's connected to who, sort of thing. So he's already figured out the chain from Weiner, came from Blumenthal, came from, what's his name, the clown, and then that came directly from Clinton. So this is what Grassley is doing. He's forming a chain. He's saying, okay, if I got this guy, and I know I got this guy, who are the people in between? And so he's connecting the dots and connecting building this chain of individuals that the information would have had to flown through. Yeah, flown through. So anyway, good job, Chuck Grassley. He's determined, man. I'll say that for old Chuck. I mean, he's old. He could retire. He don't need any of this. But that's not what we see. We see Chuck Grassley is just digging in, man. He is digging in. He's a stubborn old dude, and don't underestimate Charles Grassley in getting to the bottom of this stuff. Jeff Sessions gave a speech today, and he was asked by Catherine Herridge in the press conference. After he gave his speech, he took some questions, and Catherine Herridge asked him a very direct question about the FISA abuses and things and such. And Jeff Sessions said that, of course, he gave a little talk about, there has to be absolute, integrity at the FISA court, blah, 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 blah. But the most important thing he said was that Sessions has said that he has directed the IG, the Inspector General, Horowitz, to take on this task of looking into the FISA abuses. And it probably already came into his purview anyway because of the investigation he's doing. It would be hard for him to do the investigation he's doing and not find himself getting into the FISA abuses because it ties into the dossier, which ties into Strzok and Page and ties into Orr and McCabe, who he's already investigating. Everything leads to everything else. So that's why it's taken so long probably for Horowitz to go through all this, a year and 3, going on a year and 4 months now, because he starts out with a email investigation and leaks, and he ends up getting sucked into this and something else, and then he's sucked into the dossier, then the dossier leads to FISA surveillance warrants, and it all becomes one big scheme. They're all connected. None of these things are standing alone in a vacuum. They're all connected. The FISA warrants connected to the dossier, connected to the email investigation. It's all connected because all the players were connected. The people who were doing all this stuff were the same guys. Comey, Strzok, Page, Yates, been stroking us, or this cabal, this little cabal was involved in all of these things. So if you get into one, it's naturally going to lead you into the other. But Sessions has now confirmed that Horowitz has been tasked with looking into the FISA surveillance warrants. Now, if you remember, about a week ago, we talked about the fact that Grassley and I think Nunes as well want to see the transcripts directly from the FISA court. And of course, they sent this letter to the judge, and she sent it back and said, well, there's 2 issues. Number one, it's separation of powers. Can I even do that? Do I need to go through the executive branch because I'm part of the executive branch? That's an issue. And then she suggested, wouldn't it be easier just to go through the DOJ? Because, you already got the stuff from the DOJ. And this, of course, led Grassley and Nunes to basically say, look, yeah, we got the FISA application and stuff, and we've viewed it, and we've talked about it. We put it in the memo, what was there and all that. But the issue that they're pressing, and the reason why they want to see the actual FISA court transcripts, is because they believe that there may have been changes, modifications made to the FISA documents that they got from the DOJ. They want to compare the original actual FISA court application and transcripts to what they were given by the DOJ to see if any changes may have been made. That shows you how little Grassley and Nunes trust what they're getting from the DOJ. That's what they're saying to the FISA court judge. They're saying, yeah, We got it from the DOJ. We understand that. But we want it from you. That's basically saying because we think that what we get from you may look different than what we got from the DOJ because they made changes. Claire McCaskill wants to know why the NSA brass hasn't declared war on Russia already. Well, there's so many things wrong with that. Number one, the NSA cannot declare war on the Russians. Number two, declaring war on the Russians can, blow back on you because they can also do a little nastiness of their own. It's not like they're completely incompetent and incapable. They do have abilities and assets and capabilities. Also, do you really want to go down that road? The Russians have an NSA too. They have an intelligence agency too. They also have documentation of us meddling in their affairs as well. Now, if you want to play that game, you got to be prepared for the Russians to show up at the UN after you give your presentation, for them to sit there with a stack of documents as high of their evidence of meddling in their political affairs, including trying to defeat Putin in his last election, where there was a lot of American resources, intelligence resources, put into trying to defeat Putin. And they've got all that intelligence information as well. Everybody's playing the game. And I don't think that this idiot, Claire McCaskill, understands quite the game that happens in the world of international espionage and then the meddling in each other's business. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it, including us. And so you got to be very careful when you pop that genie out of the bottle. Better be very careful, and that's what they know. The rotten Reverend Clinton is now blaming Facebook for her loss. She's claiming that they charged her campaign more than Trump for ads. And so you know what happened? Facebook came out and corrected her, and they said, well, actually, Reverend, the way it works is we bill you based on how much effort it takes us to promote your ads. And what happens is that when people click on certain type of ads, they automatically show up in other ads, and the ads that are being clicked on, when you click on ads, they have a tendency to be expanded or explode throughout the internet. You click on an ad, that tells the system, oh, this is a good ad, people like it, and so therefore it gets expanded. It shows up on more and more pages. But if you want it put on a whole lot of pages, then you have to pay more. Trump didn't have to pay as much because a lot more people were interested in clicking on his ads. So for the rotten Reverend to get as many people to click on her ads, she had to pay more money. You see, it's how advertising works. And Trump understood this. And his people who did his internet campaign understood this. The guy's a genius. Whoever that guy is, I'll forget his name. But he's a genius of internet marketing. And I think he's going to be Trump's senior campaign manager in his 2020 run, by the way. So that explains it. So it was Facebook themselves that came out and shot the rotten Reverend down on that one and made her look stupid again. The rotten Reverend. The Broward County Attorney General is investigating Sheriff Scott Israel. Not just Scott Israel, but his department. It appears that there have been over 66 cases of misconduct from his deputies since he has been sheriff. And this includes everything from drug trafficking to kidnapping to playing around with prostitutes, setting people up, falsifying evidence, lying, spousal abuse, you name it. I saw the list of crimes. It's about 20, 30 crimes long that have all occurred by his deputies since he has been sheriff. Clearly, he's running a pretty loose operation down there. They don't do a lot of law enforcement. Apparently, they do a lot of law breaking. And I don't think Scott Israel is going to make it. I don't think he's going to last. I really don't. It's just a matter of time before the pressure to the point where he'll have to step down, and he should. He's a disgrace, and I wouldn't be surprised if he falls under criminal liability. Because there was some sort of stand down there, folks. 3 cops, 4 cops, don't go in, no way. That's against human nature. Human nature doesn't work that way. These guys had to be told, don't go in. That's what we're going to find. Michael Savage, radio talk show host, some of you may be fans, is now being pressed to challenge for the Feinstein seat in California. Now, a year ago, I would have said, don't waste your money, Michael. He's got a lot of it, by the way. But I would have said, don't waste your money, Mike, because it's a losing bid. But I'll tell you, the way things are shifting right now and what you see, and we're not talking about a congressional seat in a district. We're talking about the whole state of California. And, I'm not saying he'll win, but I'd love to see Savage run. And I'd like to see what his numbers are, if for nothing else, just to see how far, what kind of progress they're making out there in California. You got to remember, folks, a lot of you are younger than me. You don't remember this, but Ronald Reagan, of course, was from California and carried California. Richard Nixon was from California, Whittier, California, and carried California 2 times, as did Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush in 92, or was it 92? No, 96, I guess it was. Yeah, 96. He carried California. George Herbert Walker Bush. And that wasn't that long ago. It was less than 20 years ago that Republicans were winning California. Can't give up on California. Yes, Michael Savage, give it a shot, buddy. Give it a shot. Let's find out what you can do. Let's see what the numbers are. It's a Senate seat. It's a Senate, which means the whole state. He's not running in a district. Now, he might be able to find a conservative district to win, but a Senate seat is much better than a House seat. And I would like to see what he could do in a Senate run. Let's see what he does. Okay, this next story. Laura Ingraham. Some of you are very familiar with Laura Ingraham. She had a report on her show last night that the Broward County Sheriff's Department told deputies not to enter the school unless they had their body cameras on. The problem is, the 3 deputies who arrived after the school resource officer, who was already there, the 3 deputies who arrived on the scene did not have body cameras. So they're told, oh, you can't go into school unless you got your body cameras on. But they didn't have body cameras. And then, while this is all going down, they lose communications. What a mess, man. That sheriff should have been gone a long time ago. That's not a sheriff's department he's running down there. I don't know what that is, but that's not a sheriff's department. Man, that's something else. What a mess. It's like the Keystone Cops on steroids, man. You can't F something up this bad. I could try and screw up that bad and I couldn't do it. What a mess. They need Sheriff Jones down there. Send Sheriff Jones down there for like a 90-day. We'll let you borrow Sheriff Jones for 90 days, Broward County. He'll come down there for 90 days and get your situation straightened out. Yes, he will. You'll be one of the safest communities in America, just like we are. Charles Grassley thinks the Russians played Steele. Now, this is a narrative that a lot of people are pushing because of the actions Grassley took by sending out the letters. He's trying to get to Oleg Deripaska, trying to get to his lawyer there in London. He's trying to get through this lobbyist. And I don't know if I definitely don't agree with the take. This is what everyone else is taking, but they're working from the Russian narrative that the Russians hacked the DNC. The Russians were the source of the dossier. So what a lot of people are saying in this is that, oh, well, Grassley is honing in on it because he thinks that what happened here was that the Russians took advantage of Christopher Steele. They knew he was trying to get all this information, so they fed him all this information that was phony information. They fed him this phony garbage to his intermediaries, of course. Fed his phony intermediaries this garbage to give it to Steele, and Steele got played by the Russians. They took advantage of him. Now, this is what everybody is thinking that Grassley's mind is working towards. I don't think so. Grassley's a smart old guy, you know, and I think that he's probably thinking more along the lines that I'm thinking. I think that Grassley is looking at the facts. Right now, we are told that there were 5 dossier sources. One was a female, known as the Talker, but we don't know her name. But she apparently worked at a hotel in Moscow, probably the hotel that Trump stayed at. It's probably who she is. The other 4 have been identified, and 2 of those 4 have come out and flatly denied anything that was attributed to them in the dossier, and the other 2 have not commented or refused to comment. So there's no evidence that there were Russians feeding this information to intermediaries. And I think that this is why Grassley is going after these intermediaries. Not because he believes that the Russians were taking advantage of Steele and feeding him a bunch of garbage, but because Grassley knows that if he gets these intermediaries and says, okay, who were your Russian sources? And they have to say, well, Russian sources, and they can't maybe come up with any. You see, I think this is really the road that Grassley is going down. I think Grassley is figuring out what I'm figuring out, that this all came out of the Clinton universe, and if there are any Russian sources, they were probably paid. They were paid Russian sources, and they were paid to say what they said. Just like Curveball during Iraq was paid to say there were weapons of mass destruction. And then we learn in 2006, 2007, when he comes out and goes public, and they go interview him, and they say, yeah, well, don't you feel bad about giving the Bush administration all that false information? He's like, I don't feel bad about it. They knew everything I was telling them was a lie. They just kept paying me. And I kept saying, look, are you sure? You don't really believe that, what I just told you, do you? And they're like, we don't really care if it's true. We just need some Iraqi that we can use as a source so we can get our damn war going. You just keep talking, and we'll keep paying. If you can't think of anything more, we'll come back in a week. Think up some more shit. Some more lies. We don't care if they're lies. Just keep talking. That's exactly how things operate. So anyway, I think that that's what's going on. I think that Grassley is realizing at this point that there may not have been any Russian sources at all. If they were probably paid insiders, friends of the Clintons, friends of some, Downer, or friends of Steele, or friends of somebody who were paid. And that's why we need to look at Perkins Coie. I'll be talking about that in the next video. David Hogg, everybody knows who that is by now, the little kid that's going out on MSNBC and CNN and all these other places, says he refuses to go back to class until gun control is passed. Well, you'll never be going back to school because gun control will never be passed. If not the type of gun control he's talking about. We might get better background checks or something like that, but there's not going to be anything like what this kid's dreaming about. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So he'll never be going back to school as far as I'm concerned. And do any of you really care? I mean, this kid, poor kid. I hate to see a kid being used like this, but, that's life. Shepard Smith, a lot of people are celebrating the fact that he has been fired. According to Fox News, I just checked before I did this video, there's no official statement from Fox News that Shepard Smith has been fired. None whatsoever. In fact, just the opposite. As far as their statement is concerned, that this is just people talking on the internet, that they have not fired Shepard Smith. But they should. Chicago taxpayers will be hit with $175 million in taxes to pay for roadwork and construction for the Obama Library. You see, even after he's president, he's still screwing you. He's still screwing you. Chicago taxpayers, $175 million. Now, generally I would laugh and say they deserve it, but unfortunately, this money will not just come from taxpayers in Chicago. This money will come from all taxpayers in Illinois. And we know that there's some good, strong conservatives, libertarians, populists, other folks like that, who are not liberal, who do not live in Chicago. They live in the outer areas of Chicago, but they have no voice because Chicago's got so much population in the state of Illinois that they basically, the rest of the state really has no say. They're forced to live with the liberal nut jobs in Chicago. What they want is what everyone in Illinois gets. So I feel bad for the residents of Illinois who are not liberal whack jobs, who are going to have to fork over all these millions. It'll be a lot more than 175 million. And my God, you're going to have Obama's library right there. That's embarrassing. I feel bad for you folks that live in the more rural parts of Illinois, outside the city of Chicago. My heart bleeds for you. I understand how you feel. We used to have a liberal governor here. Terry McAuliffe says he will challenge Trump in 2020. Good. Go ahead. You're just as easy to beat as any of the rest of the field. And the con man that you are, and the skeletons you have in your closet, and your connections to the Clintons, I don't think you'll go very far. I think Bernie will beat you. Terry, the bag man. Joseph Misford, identified as Source B in the dossier, the professor, is missing. According to his girlfriend, Anna, whom they have a child together, but they're not married, the last time she heard from him was in October of 2017. She's not heard from him since. He sent her a rather strange email, said that he had been hounded by a London reporter. He said he had been questioned by the FBI, and he told her not to respond to the email. Then the last we hear is that he may have been in Italy, where we know he does hang out, at the spy school with Mr. Milian. So it appears that Joseph Misford, the professor, source B of the dossier, no one can find him. Now, I don't think anything's really happened to him. I think he's in the same boat Christopher Steele is in. He knows they're narrowing down, and he doesn't want to talk. Maybe he was paid a lot of money to make up lies. Maybe he just doesn't want the attention for some reason. But I don't think anything's really happened to him. I just think that he's hiding. Bottom line, I just think he is trying to lay low until the storm blows over, and then he can stick his head back up again. But he knows right now that there are investigators for these various committees, the FBI, the IG, various people trying to locate him to get a statement. Maybe Mueller's team, I don't know. But I think he's just laying low. That would be my guess. Harvey Weinstein's company has filed for bankruptcy. Harvey Weinstein should be deported back to the United States and prosecuted. He's a rapist. And that's what should happen to him. Of course his company's filing for bankruptcy. Hard to make movies when you're overseas and you're in the process. I heard that there was, indictments coming down against him. It should be. My God, I mean, as much evidence as they've got of the things that this guy's been doing for years and years. Overwhelming evidence. I'm very, very surprised that he's not been arrested. I'm sure if he comes back to the country, I think he's in Europe right now. I'm sure if he comes back, they'll arrest him as soon as he hits the airport. Surprised they haven't had him, sent back here. A judge has shot down the lawsuit by California Greenie Weenies to stop the wall. Yeah, they were trying to stop Trump's wall, the California Greenie Weenies, and they were trying to basically say, well, he hasn't produced an economic or a environmental impact statement to show how much damage is going to be done to the environment by putting that wall there. Well, I don't know. I don't think he gives a flying, about the environmental impact statement. He's going to build his damn wall. And you folks in Southern California are going to get a wall, whether you like it or not. They've already started construction. But the judge has shot down the lawsuit by the California Greenie Weenies to try and stop the wall. Ain't going to happen. Wall's going up. It's going up as we speak. China has eliminated term limits for president. Xi Jinping will be the president of China forever until he dies. That's what happens in these type of regimes. Who is going to... Because once you get that kind of power, whether it's a Putin or a Jinping or any of these guys, once they get in that position of power and they build their party, Communist Party, around them, they destroy any political enemies. You'll never defeat them in an election. And when you remove the term limit for president, that's it. That's the only hope you had.